Hello, I'm Dan from EDEMO Electric Bikes, and this is my review of the Riese Müller Superdelite. So the bike that we're looking at today is a Superdelite. It's a GT roll-off with a GX pack, a nylon cockpit. The best part about this bike is that it falls into that sort of category of the mountain bike, lap of the world, or maybe more realistic lap of Dartmoor or Exmoor type bike. Really capable bike, almost I guess like the Land Rover of the e-bike world. You'll notice from the bike that we've got here, the super part of it means that we've got a twin battery. So we've got one in the top tube and one in the down tube, a total of 1,125 watt hours. We've got a choice on these bikes as to the drive chain. So we can either have a touring, a vario, or a roll-off spec. We get to choose on the display whether we go for the Intuvia, the Kiox, the Nyon, or the smartphone hub. And then there's lots of other things like racks that we can have put on them. We can have different profile rear racks. And I don't know if I mentioned a second ago, the GX pack, which is the knobbly tyres. And one of the last options that come onto it are then an uprated suspension front and rear to take it up to the Fox float suspension, which is the same that's used on the top-end Delight mountain bike that they produce. This bike is available in two different colours. The Tundra Grey, which is this one, a kind of a greeny colour, not quite so grey, but Tundra Grey. Or the alternative is a warm silver matte. And the bike also comes in three different frame sizes, a 47, a 51 and a 56 centimetre frame. The one that we're looking at today is the 51 centimetre frame, so the medium frame. So starting down the front of the bike here, this bike has got the GX option. That means that this is going to have the Schwalbe Johnny Watts tyre. This is Schwalbe's new tyre. Apologies, this one's a little bit dirty, might have been used. This new tyre, they describe as their sports utility vehicle tyre. It's basically saying it's an all-round tyre. It's suitable of doing the road miles, but also super grippy when you go off-road. If you're considering doing a bit of both, then this is definitely the tyre that you want to be going for. With the brakes on this one, we're talking hydraulic brakes, as the same across all of the Riese Müller range. This one is using on the front the Magura MT4 4-pot caliper brakes, so it means you've got two pistons on either side of the brake pad to give extra stopping power onto that front disc. The rear uses a twin-pot caliper, as you'll be using mainly your front brake as you're trying to slow this beast up. The suspension that we've got here is pneumatic suspension, so it's air suspension which can be tweaked to the rider's preference and also weight. It's something that we do with every bike that we deliver. We'll set this up. It comes with a shock pump that we can attach on the front there, and then you can raise or lower the pressure of the suspension. This is the uprated version. So when we have specified the GX pack with the knobbly tyres, we've got uprated suspension as well. So the travel on this is now 140mm compared to the 100mm that will come on the standard GT bike. It also has a lockout feature, so that if you are riding on road and you want to have a more efficient ride, you just move the little lever around and it will lock the suspension out. But most of the time this stays completely open and people go for a far more comfortable ride. The mud guards on this bike are a composite plastic aluminium mud guards, so they're pretty robust mud guards that are going to be great for when you do go off-road and you start knocking it about a little bit. You'll find you don't just break these on the first thing that you tap them on. Next thing to look at down here is, this is called a through axle on these wheels. So if I show you how this works, on this side here we've got a quick release lever, which I'm going to put down. And on this side you can see there's a collar on the outside of this that closes when you press this. So if you press it and twist it, it locks in, and then you can pull your axle out. Your wheel is now separate to your bike. It's just being held in by the pressure of the bike. But this makes the front end of the bike an awful lot stiffer. And it's a great way of, just having a nice simple skewer to pull out. Most important thing is remember how this comes out. I've had plenty of calls from people that have said, well, I've removed the circlip and the next piece, and there's a piece of plastic, and now I've lost that piece and can't put it back together. So remember, it's really simple. You put it back in it goes, open it up, and then just lock it in again. And then as we move up the fork, then we start seeing things like the front rack. Now, the front rack on this bike is an option. It's common across the Homage, the Supercharger, the Charger and the Delight. This rack basically fits onto the frame of the bike here. There's two fittings here. It bolts on. You can either buy this when you factory order your bike, or you can buy it further down the line. It's a great option, and whilst it will hold loads and loads of sandwiches or a roll mat and a sleeping bag and stuff, most important part, as you can see from here, it just looks really, really good. But quite interestingly, and it catches a few people out when you ride away, this is actually attached directly to the frame. So when you turn your handlebars, you'll find it doesn't move anywhere, which is nice because if you've got the weight actually sitting onto the forks, when you turn, it normally would make the bike fall over to the side. So they use these fabric manufacture bottles, which have got a great little fitting on the back that allow the bottle to be clipped onto the carrier. These come as standard with the bike, so you get two of these with the bike anyway, and they're just a really great design. I normally say one for water, one for beer. I think that's responsible. This bike, in this specification, we have the Nyon cockpit fitted. One of the big benefits of either the Kiosk cockpit, the Nyon cockpit, or the smartphone hub cockpit is that they all have this adjustable stem. So there's a pivot going through the top of the stem here, which allows us to move the handlebars up and back down again. So you get that really small adjustment to try and make the bike absolutely perfect for you. On this one, we've got the Nyon display. So this is the large touchscreen display with the built-in sat-nav, which we can demonstrate in just a minute for you. As I mentioned earlier on, this bike is the roll-off GT spec, which means it's got an electronic shifter. So if we start up at the top end of these handlebars and move our way across, the first thing that you're going to notice is on these ergon grips, we've got this bar end popping out. This is part of the GX pack upgrade. It's called an ergon GP3 bar end, which it just gives you a second hand position. So when you're doing some of those longer journeys, it's sometimes nice to get your hand moved around and you sort of, stop some of the pains that you're going to be getting. Again, Ergon, a superb manufacturer of hand grips, and these just come, the bar ends as part of the GX upgrade, and the other part is part of the standard GT spec. As we move in, you'll then see that we've got the roll-off gear shifter, so a 14-speed electronic hub on this bike, and the gear shifter is on a little thumb button here. We've got a plus and a minus button. So up a gear, press and hold for 3, and down a gear. And then the roll-off will automatically bring itself back down to a ride-off gear. So normally in the shop we'll set that as gear 5. So if you approach a junction in 14th gear and forget to change down, then a split second later you'll hear the hub indexing itself all the way back down to 5th gear, and all you need to do is ride off. So one of the big benefits of having a hub gear like roll-off is that you can change gear whilst you're standing still. Moving along again, we'll see here we've got the brake levers. Now, these brake levers are absolutely brilliant. So they're a Magura MT brake levers, front and rear. UK spec, so we've got brakes on the right-hand side, sorry, front brake on the right-hand side, rear brake on the left-hand side. But most importantly, on this brake lever, there's actually a little brake in it with a switch, so that as we pull the lever, I'm just going to turn the lights on, as we pull the lever, we'll see that we get on the back the rear brake light lighting up. So this bike comes as standard with built-in brake lights, and that works for obviously the rear brake as well. Then on the back of the brake lever, there's a button here to change your main light as well. So on the front, we've got a Supernova M99 Mini, superbly powerful light, great for riding at night or even just low light. But one of the best features is when you press on the button, then you've got a main beam as well. So you can ride happily through the night with this bike, and you'll be able to see absolutely everything that's around you. Moving on across from the main beam and dipped headlights, most important feature on the bike is a very nice bell. And then next thing along, probably not as important as a bell, but is the sat-nav. So on this bike with the Nyon display, it was recently released, so back in the back end of 2020, and probably every bike we've sold since has been specified with the Nyon on it. So Its big feature, I guess, is, well, two big features on it. One is the fact that it has a built-in sat-nav that's on it. The other one is that it is touch screen. So everybody's absolutely loving this thing. It allows you to see a lot of the same information that you'll see on all the other displays as well. But it has the ability then to be configurable. So maybe you want to see the altitude that you've been climbing, the graph that goes with that. We've got that on there. If you want to know the number of calories you've burnt or the power the bike's been putting in compared to what you've been putting in, how much time you've spent in all the different modes, that's all available on this display all of the time. So it's a really, really good feature, loads to play with. Bosch are bringing out new bits for it all the time, new updates. And one of the most recent updates they've brought is, they've called it a gamification thing, where they've allowed you to do a comparison of how much money you are saving compared to driving around in your car, which is a really nice sort of toy to have on there as well. Carrying on to the left-hand side of the handlebars, the next thing that we see is then the controller. So the buttons that are going to allow us to change the assistance level on the bike, so anywhere from all the way down to off. So you can try and ride it off if you like. It's a very heavy bike when you don't have the motor on. So ride it from Eco up to Tour, EMTB or Sport, depending on how we've configured it in the shop for you, and then the highest mode is Turbo. So down in Eco you can expect about a sort of a 50% assistance, so another half a person, invisible, lightweight, sitting on the back and pedalling with you, and up to the Turbo range then sort of 3.5 times the people, so 3.5 invisible, lightweight people sitting on the back pedaling with you, which is always really nice. So when you come to the hills, this will literally just flatten everything. That, you know, there's nothing that it's not going to get up, so it's absolutely superb. So one of the really nice features about the Superdelite is the super part of it means that it has 2 batteries. So it's a Delite with 2 batteries. In the top tube here, we've got a 500 watt-hour battery, and in the down tube here, we've got a 625 watt-hour battery. In total, we've got 1,125 watt-hours of capacity, which is loads to take you well over 100 miles of cycling. For removing the batteries, the simple thing is we got keys that clip into the frame here. These are the same keys that are going to be used for your lock as well. So one key, turn in here and it will lift out. It's the same as on all the other bikes, and same mechanism. Turn the key, press the piece on the end, and then just lift the battery out. When you want to charge the bike, there's a charge point that is on the bike round the back down here. Plugging in the charger that comes with it is a Bosch, 6 amp charger, so it's the fast charger. That will charge both batteries at once for you. So it will incrementally step the batteries up on charging, and it does the same when it discharges as well. It steps them down again. So it's a fast charger that's supplied with this bike. If you want to take out a battery and charge it individually, key in the side, pick the battery out. It's got the terminals that are the same on the charger, charging port on the bike, plug in the bottom, and you'll be able to rapidly charge one of the batteries. Also, with these batteries, the bike can be relatively heavy with both of these in, so the batteries are about 3.5 kilograms each. If you want to put this bike on a rack on the car, you just need to check the load capacity. It goes onto most of the racks that I've had before with the batteries in, but just for safety, I normally take them out, and there's a blanking plate that you can buy to go in each one of these, and then you can store the batteries in your car. Moving down to the next item is the lock that is fitted on this bike. So again, this is a standard item on the bike, so this isn't an optional extra. It's supplied with every single one of the bikes. It's called an Abus Bordeaux 6500, I think, and it's a really cool design in the way that it kind of clamps the lock in onto the bike. Open the bracket, the lock comes out, and then the lock will literally just fold out in front of you and make a loop. So these are rubberized, so that when you actually loop it around your frame onto something, it's not going to scratch it, and these are metal bars. So if you do decide that you're just going to nip into the cafe or the pub or something, then you can quickly bolt your bike onto something, and you can be sure that it's going to be there when you get back. Next thing down here is this is the rear shock. So it's this part that is actually dampening the movement of the rear wheel on the bike. This is an SR Suntour shock, the upgraded version. This is giving us around about 140mm travel rear to match the front that we've got. There is an upgraded version of this up to the Fox Float version, still 140mm travel but a far more refined shock. The next thing to see is that this part here is a rear swing arm on this bike, so it's pivoted onto the main part of the frame just here, and that allows the whole of this rear wheel to move independently of the frame. So when you're riding along, whoops, you'll see from the suspension that you're getting that travel on the wheel, and it's that travel that does two things. One, it gives the rider enormous amounts of comfort, so there's plenty of potholes on our roads at the moment, so it will just absorb those. But the other thing that it does is it acts as a safety feature, so very much like in a car. If you imagine driving a car with no suspension, it would bounce all over the road. It's the same with a bike. So if you can get your tyres pushed down into the road the whole time, you're going to find your bike is stuck to the road an awful lot more, and when you're travelling at high speeds, it's going to be a lot easier to control. So that's the purpose of the rear suspension. So on the handlebar, we've got this lever on the left-hand side, which is for our dropper seat post, which is built in here. The dropper seat post basically works, you press the lever and your saddle will rise, and if you press it whilst you're sitting on it, your saddle will fall. Something like this. Sweet! Who doesn't want one of those? And then to drop it down again, you'd have the weight of your body on the saddle, press the lever and sit down, and you'll drop it down again. Nice thing about this saddle, it's mainly used so that you can get full leg extension whilst you're cycling, and then as you approach the lights you can drop down and you can get your foot flat onto the floor for the stability. Well, you can do that in slow motion. Get ready. Oh, it's so good. Oh dear, kids. I'm just going to do that all day. Is that all right? Right, sorry, grow up. Moving on down to the motor on this bike. So this is a Bosch motor, as with all Riese and Muller bikes. This is a Gen 4 CX motor that's in here. So we're talking 250 watts of power and 85 Newton meters of torque. So it's the most powerful motor that they make. To transfer the power from the front here back to the rear wheel, it uses something really, really smart, which is this belt drive. So this is a belt drive that's made by a company called Gates. It's a Gates carbon belt drive. And it's just got the benefit that you're not going to need to oil it like a chain. You're not going to need to do the maintenance. And it's a straight or a direct drive, so straight from the front sprocket onto the rear sprocket, which means there's no movement in the belt, so it's not going to wear itself either. So it's just a really, really great low maintenance option that goes with it. The only maintenance you really need to do on it is to make sure that we've got the belt tight, so it's not loose and flapping around. Now there's a great app to do this on your phone. It's made by the manufacturer of the belt. So the belt is a Gates carbon belt drive, and it's essentially like a guitar tuner. So all we do is we open up the app on our phone, which I've done here. We hold it up against the belt here, and then I have to stop talking, and we give it a little twang. So there we go, 38.4 hertz. You might see it loosen off when you first start riding the bike, but then you can always just wind it back up to it again to about 50 hertz. To make the adjustment to the tension on the belt, you've got two bolts on the back here and the same round on the other side. Just break these two open, and then you'll see on the end here, there's another little bolt inside that you can turn, and just give half turn on that, half turn on the other side, and you'll step back the axle, and that will put the tension on here. It's really minor adjustments to actually get the tension on the belt. One of the nice features that this bike has, and it's one of the real standout features of this bike as well, is this rack that sits on the back here. So this is a pannier rack. It's designed to take panniers, I think up to about 20 kilograms. Yep, 20 kilograms panniers on the back. But what's really special about it is it doesn't sit on the rear wheel. It is actually bolted onto the frame so that all the weight of this is transferred into the main frame of the bike, which means that you still get that free movement of the rear wheel without the panniers sitting on it. So it makes for the safety and the comfort of the ride an awful lot better. One feature to think carefully about when purchasing this bike. So a lot of people will be thinking, do I buy the Homage or do I buy the Superdelite? It's quite, when you look at the bikes, they're very, very similar, but obviously the main difference is the Homage will have a step through, so you can get through the frame here. One of the things that scuppers a lot of our older riders when they're getting onto this bike is this rear rack that sits up on the back. So it's actually very high. If you imagine that to get on your bike, normally you would swing a leg over the back wheel, which is down here. This now has an additional rack up here. So if you're thinking that mobility maybe isn't as good as it used to be, or you're going to have this bike in 10 years' time and you still want to be jumping on it, just think about how you are at your ballet dancing skills when you swing a leg over the back of the bike, and are you going to clear this rack? If not, maybe consider going for the Homage with the step through that's on it. There is one other option. This can actually be removed as a factory option. We take this rack off and we can go for a low profile carrier. Now, the downside of that is that you can't then go for the GX pack. You would have to go for the standard GT pack, not that it's that much of a problem, but you would end up with a low profile carrier fitting straight onto here. It will only carry about 5 kilograms of bags at that point, but at least you'll be able to get on your bike for the next 10 years. So on the rear rack, same as all the other bikes as well, these have inbuilt adapters on these racks. Now, they do vary across the bikes depending on which one you get. This one has an MIK adapter, which allows you to clip certain bags onto it. So if a bag comes with an adapter, you can clip it on that. And that might be a clip-on sort of twin pannier bag that hangs over the sides, or even a top bag that sits on the top here. So last thing to look at on the bike is then the actuator that we've got down the bottom for the roll-off E14 hub. So there's a 14-speed hub in this bike. It can be a mechanical one on some other models, older models, but Riese and Muller have moved to the E14, which is the electronic shifter. So there's a little device that's hanging off the back of the axle down here, which is an actuator to move the gearing that's in there. It's a really simple little device, but all you need to do is remember that if you're going to drop your wheel out, you just need to unplug the cable to make sure it's still not attached to the rest of the bike. It's great. It's just a lovely bike. It looks lovely. The colours are incredible. The capabilities of it are beyond anything else on the market today. Just that whole idea of this dual battery, this full suspension, the electronic roll-off, the belt drive, the sat-nav, everything that you could have on this bike, you're just not going to find anywhere else.